Rev up your engines!
Here we go. Well, don't say Scotty didn't warn you about Subaru and problems. Now, they recalled over 250,000 vehicles because they could lose power on the highway. The engines could be damaged. I mean, it's really unbelievable. They've had engine problems their whole life. You think they'd be able to figure out how to make the things correctly. Now, in this case, they're talking about the PCV valve, the positive crankcase ventilation valve. Now, these things have been around since I was a young mechanic in the 1960s. You think they could figure out how to build a PCV valve? It's a simple thing. It keeps oil from getting sucked into the engine and only lets the oil vapors come in and burn it so they don't pollute the atmosphere. Well, it turns out Subaru's not making these things so great. They can break, and one, they can suck oil and stall an engine, but the valves themselves can break and pieces can get sucked inside the engine and then break the engine. Now, Subaru says that, well, they're going to replace the valves and then they'll check the engine. And if your engine has a problem because the valve broke and went inside it, they'll repair the engine. Well, I've seen that in the past from many companies. Hey, they say if there's damage, they'll repair it, but they never say, oh, that's not damage from that. Believe me, they don't want to rebuild your engine for free. So if you do have a Subaru, hey, you know what I'd do if I were you? If it's running okay, I would get my own PCV valve. I wouldn't even buy one from Subaru. I get one from AutoZone or something and put in one that somebody else made and not the crap that Subaru is making. Ignorant expert says Scotty got a 2014 Audi A6 Quattro, 70,000 miles, almost perfect shape, but lately the 8-speed transmission started shifting rough here and there. Service bulletin says replace the fluid, so I plan on doing it, but the dealer wants $30 a quart for the oil. Is the ZF fluid really better than, say, Amsol? Could I use something else? On that, you want to use the ZF fluid. The Audi dealers aren't the only place on earth that you can buy that fluid. Get on the internet. Try local auto parts stores. There's always places that you can find something cheaper than at the dealer. For those particular things, I use the old BAP Geon auto parts stores. They can get me the transmission fluid cheaper than what the Audi dealer sells for it, but it's the same stuff. You want to stick to that ZF fluid because Audis are bad enough as it is. You don't want a chance what additives are in Amsol versus in the ZF fluid. You want to stick to exactly what's in it. All German cars these days are like that. You don't want to mix and match. You want to stick with what it came with. But like I said, there's plenty of places out there to sell it. Mercedes-Benz, yeah, their antifreeze costs a fortune too. You don't have to buy at the Mercedes-Benz dealer. You can get the same stuff somewhere else cheaper. Go on Amazon, go on eBay, look around. Buy something cheaper than at the dealer when it comes to fluids, because they're just fluids and anybody can sell them. Stevie Fott says, Scotty, I'm looking to do a full brake job on my 2011 RAV4 all-wheel drive. Do you recommend OEM parts or aftermarket kits from Amazon? I'm afraid fitment and quality. I want to know who makes the brake parts when I do a brake job. Perhaps the best brake pads in the world that you can buy for those are Akebono, the Japanese company, Akebono. I'd buy Akebono pads. They're excellent pads. They're actually somewhat better than the original equipment pads that came on them. They're excellent pads. If you need rotors, if you use Akebono pads, you can use any rotors. I often will use Akebono, the expensive pads, but I'll go to AutoZone and buy the rotors. On a small vehicle like that, they work perfectly fine. I don't like using cheaper rotors on giant vehicles, like if it's a 350 Ford truck or a gigantic van. Yeah, I'll pretty go OEM or high-quality companies that have been making brake parts for years. But in your case, the important thing is the pads. And if you want to do it right, get Akebono pads. And if you need rotors, you can use whatever rotors you want. And if you can't find Akebono pads, get dealer pads. You know, there's nothing wrong with them. They're excellently made pads. But I think the Akebonos are better. And you can get them lots of places. Jackie Child says, Scotty, what do you think of the Toyota Previa egg van? Never heard it called the egg van. All right, those things are almost indestructible. They could run and run and run and run. They didn't have much power. Boy, they could go and go. My brother-in-law had one. He took it to England with him when they were teaching in England for 3 years. He drove it there, and then he sold it to some English guy and came back. They did have a weird feature that the motor was in the middle, and those motors were really hellacious to work on. But being a Toyota, they didn't generally need much work. I've seen them with 200,000 miles, and the engine's never been touched, so you don't really care. The weird thing was, the motor was in the middle, but in the front was the power steering and air conditioning, so The back of the engine had a drive shaft to run power to the wheels to drive it, but the front of the engine also had a drive shaft that went to this weird assembly that ran the power steering and the air conditioning. So they were very expensive to make with all that extra powertrain stuff. That's one of the main reasons they stopped making them. When they went to the Sienna van, then they just put a Toyota Camry V6 engine in them. It was all unitized, and it was simpler to build. It cost them too much money to make those Previas. They made them so well that it cost too much money to make it, so they went to the Siennas that were actually cheaper to manufacture. Chuck Buck says, I got a 2006 Kia diesel with an intermittent start issue. 3 days it'll crank, no turnover. Then all of a sudden it'll turn fine, run for a week. Took it in to the dealer and they say injectors are wearing out. It's going to cost a whole bunch of money. Could be something else. Could be lots of things. But here's the problem. I warn people against buying diesels. When I was a young mechanic, diesels were a lot simpler. They were mechanical. They had a mechanical diesel injection pump. Cost a fortune to make because it was all mechanical like a Swiss watch. Get the diesel fuel, it'd put it under high pressure, and then it would go through the injectors at high pressure and spray into the engine. Today, everything is run by computers. So, working on these things, unless you have a very fancy computer, years of experience, not an easy thing to do. You're going to have to trust the dealer. From my experience, hardly anybody works on Kia diesels, especially here in the United States. They're going to have a very limited amount of people that can even work on it in the first place. And then the dealers aren't particularly known for honesty, but, you know, if in your area you can find somebody other than a dealer who really knows how to work on Kia diesel engines, take it to them. Have them check it out. As I told people before, one, I'm not a fan of Kia, and I'm also not a fan of diesels. You put those two together, you got two no's. I personally, in the United States, would not buy a Kia diesel. If you are going to buy a diesel, make sure it's one that people know how to work on, that there are aftermarket guys that work on it, not just the dealerships. I got friends that work at dealerships that specialize on diesels. They make a lot of money. The bills that they give to the customers are humongous. Mark 2018 says, Scotty, I'm wondering if Moog suspension parts are good. I got Moog lower control arm for my 95 Nissan. Oh yeah, they make excellent parts. Moog's been around for a really long time. One thing though, I do warn everybody about any parts because things change all the time. Who knows? Maybe they changed last night. I don't know. I don't know until I buy them. If you find, you look at the Moog part and it says in a box, made in China, I go buy another brand because there's a lot of companies that are just switching stuff to China. There were parts that used to be in the United States and now they're made in China. Give you an example. I had a customer, they wanted struts put on their car. So they knew the name Monroe from the American company. So they bought Monroe. I look at it, thing was made in China. I put it on, he bought it. It didn't last 6 months before they started bouncing and clanging. They were just terrible. Piece of junk. Always look at the box before you buy it. See if it says made in China. If it does, my advice, look somewhere else for those particular parts. Chinese can make good steel products, but a lot of their rubber parts in them, they're kind of weak, and I tend to stay away from them myself. Mikey Lux at 99 says, Scotty, you told me to watch out for Blue Devil head gasket sealer. Is there any sealers you'd recommend? The best sealer that I have found is this crazy old one, Steel Seal. But you can only use the Steel Seal with pure water. They keep changing formulations and the antifreeze in the cars. If you're willing to take the thermostat out, flush your system out entirely so there's nothing in it, then put in pure water and the Steel Seal, it is one of the best sealers I've ever seen. Most people aren't willing to go that far. If you're not willing to go that far, the Bars head gasket sealer, they sell it down the street here at AutoZone. The best one for normal people. You're not going to flush it all out. You get the one that says, you know, safe for all antifreezes, and give it a try. Maybe it'll work. It's worth trying. But the Steel Seal one actually works the best. Only you do have to flush it all out. And of course, you can't do that up north when it's freezing outside because the engine will freeze. You can only do that in the summer up north because it would freeze and crack the engine. Down here, you wouldn't have to worry. In Houston, you can do it anytime you want. But you do have to flush the whole system out. Realize that. Because if you don't, it'll often clog stuff up. And I've seen people just pour it in, and yes, it will clog things up. Especially with the modern antifreeze. That's the 5-year organic acid technology, or the HOT, the hybrid organic that Toyota uses. If you're willing to do all that work, that's worth a try. But if not, use the Subarus one. And AutoZone selling, lots of places sell them. It's not quite as strong, but it can work if you don't want to flush the whole thing out. Joey Bakuka says, Scotty, what problems can a dirty or bad lifters cause to the car when you're driving? Okay, you got hydraulic lifters that adjust the valves. As they age, especially in American cars, they often start ticking. Now, some of them, when you start the car up, they tick like mad, but once you get going, the ticking stops. If it runs perfectly fine, you check engine light doesn't come on, the engine doesn't misfire. I've seen people driving 10 years that way. But if they're really worn, you'll start to get misfires, the check engine light will come on, you'll get worse gas mileage. It isn't actually hurting anything, it's just not opening and closing the valves absolutely correctly. Eventually, of course, if one broke, then it would just run like crap, because if a valve wasn't even opening anymore and it totally collapsed, it would run so bad that, nobody but a lunatic would be driving it down the road because it would be chugging, jerking. But they can make noise for quite some time. And if you've got a car like, say, a V8 car that's got 32 of those hydraulic lifters, and they start making a noise, but it runs okay, especially if it quiets down once you get running, you might live with it when you find out how much it's going to cost to replace 32 of them taking the engine apart. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.